If we ever needed to get eggs, you get them from Seneca Lake. But, they're doing fine on their own. And for whatever it is, both those lakes have similar characteristics. And whatever the Seneca Lake fish found in Champlain worked for them. They spawn in the shallows. They do these certain things. In the Lake Superior, there's 3 different strains of lake trout. There's like a shallow water laker that swims along the shallows and spawns. And then there's like a deep water laker that's called I forget what they call. There's like 3 different names. What's called there's a Siskoet, and it's a local Native American name, and it's a deep water laker. It spawns in the deep. And then there's one that's called like the humper, and it's over here in like some other little corner of Lake Superior, like some little. It only hangs out in this other little. And Superior is huge, so they just hang out and spawn over here and don't leave this area. There's like 3 different families of lake trout, but they don't crossbreed.
Wow.
And they're all restoring. They don't. I think they're doing away with their programs over there for stocking because they're being successful. So
wow.
Yeah, that's a lot of, even with our strains here. There's all our fish do something different. A rainbow isn't a rainbow isn't a rainbow. I've got 4 different strains of rainbows. 2 of them are steelhead. They're different than the Irwin R. Lee rainbows because they're more of a migratory fish. They just they behave differently.
Wow.
And they run. You can stock them in a river and then they run out to a lake. That's what you want them to do. They're not going to stick around and hang out in a river system. There's some strains of rainbows that are river fish. You can put them there and they're going to stay in the river. Our brown trout are a New York strain, which they've had for years over there, and they're resistant to diseases, and they don't grow fast, but they do hold over and they do okay. They're not huge. They don't get like big, but they get decent. So yeah, there's growth and everything. And we don't necessarily want things to get huge here. We want things to be a decent size, because if you start selecting like private hatcheries, we'll grab a fish and select for growth. They're raising a fish for market to go to Price Chopper. They want a big fish fast. You're going to select those genetics. Those genetics might be terrible for surviving in the wild. That fish isn't going to run a marathon because it's going to be putting it all into meat. And that's where the good companies know how to manipulate the genetics, so they're not going to be inbreeding those fish. They're still going to keep a large enough pool of fish. That's why we keep like the 200 pair. Like our minimum sizes, we need minimum, we need 84 pairs of lake trout minimum to get our genetic material, so it won't, digress in 10 years, 20. We have a whole range of time when, if as long as we take this many fish, we'll be fine genetically. We take 250 pair out of our other lines because we spawn them once a year, but we won't worry about that we won't worry about the genetics for 10, 20 years until we need to refresh those genetics. And you might have other problems in there before that. They might, you might see poor egg quality to where maybe we do need a new line, because, fish, it's what they, you give them the best quality food and the eggs are poor quality, then something's wrong. It could be the hatchery, but a lot of times it's just the food, the diet, and there's a lot to it. There's a lot of science to it.
So how do you harvest the eggs?
Okay, that's a good one. We have we have to anesthetize the fish. The fish don't just drop their eggs in the tank, but some will. The lake trout will. But we have set times. We know when our fish are going to spawn, just based on historic data. Most of our fish are fall spawners. The rainbows are technically spring spawners, but due to the fact that our water temperature is constant, those fish would normally, rainbows right now would be probably producing eggs, but they're going into a wintertime mode where it's going to be really cold, and they're going to just be sitting there in the river with eggs partially developed, and then they're going to by April, once the sunlight gets a little higher and the temperatures are warming up, March, April, May, they're going to start developing those eggs again, and by May they're going to be spawning. So a lot of our rainbows are technically a May spawner, but here we have fish that are spawning in December, January, February, and November even. And those fish have been either slightly manipulated by the particular hatchery that we've gotten them from, or they have constant water temperature, and that's just their window of when they take eggs. We took our steelhead. We have our wild strain of Memphremagog steelhead, which were migratory rainbows, which came from Washington, came from state of Washington, went up to the Northeast Kingdom and Lake Memphremagog, and they got a run of fish like back in the 30s, I think even up into the 50s. So these wild migratory rainbows we call them magogs, We got eggs out of them. We got a pedigree mating. We did better genetics on them. We actually took a paired mating on them. We took 1-to-1 pairs, 1-to-1 matings, and kept those fish separate in individual tanks. We raised up the fish separately. And we had little circular muck buckets, 15-gallon muck buckets, set up in raceways, and we raised each one separately because we wanted to keep the genetics really good. And you could see each family of fish from that one paired mating. These would be really big, these would be really small, these would be kind of in the middle.
Wow.
You'd see this difference. And you'd see this one family was huge. They were beautiful. 1 year, they turned into a smolt in 1 year. Smoltification is what we're looking for these migratory fish. At 7 inches, they're supposed to leave the river. So you want to raise them up for stocking in the river so they imprint and then they leave. They don't stay in the river. They're not like a put and take fish that wants to be 8 to 10 inches. We want them up to be 7. And mostly the memphremagog fish would be a small in the wild setting up there. They would take 2 years to reach that 7 inches. For us, we had fish that reaching that in 1 year. And you can do that with growth. You can do that with constant water temperature. But we noticed some fish in our population definitely grew really fast. And we lost those. Those died. And for some reason, they were not fit fish. They were really aggressive. These are the fish you want. They grow really fast. They're jumping up and eating the food. It's like, something's wrong with these fish. And something was. They got challenged a couple times in our hatchery setting. And that particular family died. Because I took these fish. We got so crazy with these fish. We got them up to a certain size. I put tags in them, little pit tags like you put in your dog. Would have a. You could take a passive integrated transponder. You would read that tag and it would give you a number. We actually did that for each family. So we had like. It's right here. These are tag numbers of individual fish. Of individual families, family 45, family 46, so we had all these individual families of steelhead, and I had to take, I took 10 fish out of each one because we wanted to get a good, healthy mix of genetics, because the previous line we had spawned in November, December, not like, middle winter, and they were inbred. They weren't doing well for Lake Champlain. So we had, and I'm not sure, there's probably like several families in there. I think we did 48 families overall.
Wow.
It was the best. That's all we could get. And some of them, were just, most of them did really well. I mean, I tracked mortality, and they were really good in the hatchery. And then, I tagged them. I had a couple fish would lose a tag, and I had to re-tag. But I wanted to have 10 per family. And then we took them all and put in population. So we knew what they were, and then we took they were outside, and then I had some untagged fish because I need to do fish health on them. So I have to actually do mortalities on these fish. I have to kill fish to do some of the fish health work. So we had extras behind them, and so we had these tagged fish, 800 fish I think all told was in this area, and we were running a chemical treatment on them, and it was a chemical they hadn't really been exposed to yet, which most of the other fish can handle, and it could have been low oxygen, it could have been something. So all these fish are together. The family, family 28, right here. So I said, I think this was the good family. These are the ones that grew big. You can see the sizes. They were huge fish. They were like this big in a year. They actually died later when challenged with with formalin treatment or low oxygen. So I had these fish were in a raceway down back, and there was dirty water above them. It was a settling area. And I was doing my treatment across the road, and then I came back, and that particular chemical will cause low oxygen in the raceways. So I was like, okay, no biggie. I've never had fish die. I know when fish die here. You know what happens. Low oxygen. Screen kicks out or standpipe kicks over, and you lose fish. But this time I was like, okay, just a standard operating procedure. Went down there after, it was a weekend. I went down there in the morning after I'd done my treatment, and went down there, and there was a dozen fish in this raceway, in the steelhead. There was a dozen fish, and there was like 17 fish in the unclipped fish, in the untagged fish. So I was like, very interesting. It's just out of 800 fish, it's just a dozen. So I can tell what family this is. I have the tags in these fish. So I went and picked these fish out.
Were they all dead?
They were these 12 fish were all dead.
Okay.
Out of this tank of 800, and I was able to tag them and get the reader out, and there was like, and these families were 10 fish each, so there was only 12 fish. There was 12 or 14, I forget how many it was. I found like, yeah, 6. It was like 6. It was 10. 6 of those fish was that family 28, the big ones. And at that point, they're all average size. You know, they had kind of, you know, they were in the group together, so they're all eating, you know, consistently and stuff. But that particular family was practically gone. So for some reason, those really big fish are really aggressive in the hatch house. And feeding really good for me, weren't really great fish.
Wow.
They didn't take that low oxygen. They had about, so segue back, this original line of willoughby fish, the ones we had before, actually the population we had, those fish actually have some kind of heart condition, and you can find that genetically. 3% of that population in the willoughby has this heart condition. The population we were getting rid of, this particular old line that we were replacing, like 30% of our fish had this heart condition. That's why they probably weren't surviving in Champlain. So that's why we got this new line. So these could have been heart condition fish. We might have found that heart condition. That might have been that one of those, the high percentage, you know, that 3% was represented, and that's what died. We gave them a challenge, and they died. And so that was 6 of those fish. I had 4 more fish. That was 2 fish from one family and 2 fish from another family. So I literally had 3 families were represented in mortality. You know, it's very interesting. Like, you know, fish are really unique and can have specific, you know, heart problems or whatever. You know, and be more. That particular fish might be the one that's more. You know, you have fish dying. Well, it may not be a random thing. It might be really specific to that particular mating. And that's when we do brood lines. We get that. We take a brood line. We take a scoop. You might have 30. I have 31 eggs out of each family of a brood line down there. So if, you know, 10 of those survive, but then all of a sudden 10 die, you know, that family could be gone. You know, and it might make it just the way it is.
That's mind blowing.
Yeah.
It never occurred to me ever that a fish could have a heart condition.
Fish got the lake trout in Lake Champlain in the 80s. One of my professors, they have herpes virus. It's EEVD, I think. It's an actual herpes virus. And I don't know how but it's a herpes virus.
Wow. Audience, you should see my face. My jaw's on the floor.
Yep. And we're not, it's in the population, it's not causing serious problems with it. You know, it's like, you know, there's enough fish out there, and, you know, but it makes it difficult for us to go get eggs out of the lake, because we have to disinfect those eggs coming in, because we don't want, because they're in a big population. Yeah, diseases can come and go in a population out there in the lake, and you may not see any problems. But here, if we get a weird disease in here, it's going to go right through your population, because we have a lot more fish in tight quarters. That's why some of our fish are, you know, resistant for certain diseases, because we know certain diseases are very common in the hatchery that we can manage, but, you know, with antibiotics and things like that, which we don't want to use. You know, we'd rather just have a resistant strain of fish, and that's what a lot of our New York fish were resistant strain, like our brookies and our browns that we get from New York. They were bred to be resistant to certain diseases, so it's like, you know, we don't have a problem with it. You know?
Admittedly, my brain has stopped at VD.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's
wow.
And there's a lot of weird stuff you find, and that's why we're always concerned about, you know, disinfecting boat trailers and things like that. You know, your waders, you know, taking your waders from one water body to the next. It's like I fish on the Battenkill more often now, because I go to Rockwell Retreat with my wife, Melissa D. And sure enough, Battenkill right there. Well, it's positive for it has whirling disease, and so you probably should be disinfecting your boots when you leave fishing the Battenkill. You know, it's one of the few places that have whirling disease in the state.
Has what kind of disease?
It's a whirling disease, and it affects rainbow trout. It's browns and brookies can tolerate it, because they grew up. It's a European disease, and it spread through like it's a big out west disease, because it's all rainbows and cutthroats out there, and they're all Oncorhynchus. They're all the genus Oncorhynchus, which I think gets the disease. But rainbows, like Colorado was known for it, and they get in their hatcheries, and the fish get to a certain size, like little fish like this, and they start whirling in the tank, and you can't get rid of it. It's in the sediment. It's in like it has a weird life cycle, but it stays in the sediment. Like you could depopulate that stream, which streams they were doing out there in places like Utah. I actually worked on one of those streams. We were depopulating the stream of all the fish and letting it sit idle without fish or life in it for like 3 years, and it's supposed, or 10, whatever the length of time was. Oh, this should be okay, but nope, it's still there. It can
Wow.
it can survive a long time. So it's like, yeah, you know, we kind of take fish health pretty serious around here, you know, but you know, we try to, you know, but we're still an open facility. I mean, we hope birds don't come in and you know, bring in disease and stuff, because we are open, basically outside. I mean, but generally, you know, we've been pretty good on a lot of stuff.
Does it make a difference? So when you say they're open,
Yes.
it means that it's not covered.
It's not
right?
covered.
Okay.
Birds, wildlife, you know, you name it can walk through. We've had deer come through here. We have osprey. We have raccoons can take fish. We have video of raccoons taking lake trout that are this big. Because the lakers just hang out on the surface at night. They'll just be hunkered down there, and the raccoon can get in there, and they get the little paws there and grab them and bite them and just pull them up.
So would it make a difference with the breeding if they were covered?
Yes. It would be really nice to have a nice enclosed facility, modern facility like Roxbury, but that's money. You know, that's I think, you know, the estimates we had when Roxbury got rebuilt, we actually had the same company was looking at rebuilding our facility, and, you know, keeping the historic aspect. You know, the old raceways down back would be used, but it's like I was talking earlier, modern facility with circular tanks, maybe some, you know, regular raceway rectangulars. Lighthouse would stay the same, I think, but it was all modern up there. Sewage treatment plant down back, you know, the whole kit and caboodle. It was like that estimate back, and that was, you know, pre-Irene, so 2000 and what was that, 2010, 2009, 10. We were, yeah, because you know, Irene happened in 11, so we had that. They were talking here about doing that, and I don't know when that one's going to happen, but that was like the $4 million estimate that's been kicked.
Wow.
And that was a complete rebuild, you know, of everything, and not using any, you know, other than using the lighthouse, you know, which I'll show you. But yeah, they, and then Roxbury, you know, got flooded away, so money went there. So now we're back at the point of just, you know, making it work with what we got. But yeah, there's trade-offs though. I mean, it would be nice to have a pole barn or something over the race, and we're looking at stuff. You know, they do make Quonset huts, these big Quonset huts. For covering stuff, and it might work. You know, we have to look at what the long-term solution is going to be. If we make things work the way it is now, we can make things work. You know, we're making things work now with you know, it'd be nice to have cover, especially like the Lakers. But like the Lakers might go away to where they're like a critical one, because if they don't like the sunlight, so we have them covered with insulation, you know, foam insulation floating on the raceways.
Wow.
And that keeps them somewhat healthy for a while, but at some point they start losing their eyesight. They start getting cataracts. They tend to get cataracts and sunburn. I mean, shallow water. You know, White River National Fish Hatchery has circular tanks with Lakers in it, and they have covers on them, dome covers. You know, and there's a trade-off. That becomes a harder. I'm used to these raceways. I'm used to working with these raceways. So, me as the old dog knew tricks, I'd have to start working with circular and having the new equipment to, you know, design, you know, to work in circulars and stuff. And it's like, yes, it'll work, but I like doing it this way, I think.
Well,
you're used to doing it for 28 years this way. You're like, you know, okay, let's try it. But circulars do work. I mean, they are nice, and they make nicer fish. I mean, I have used circulars before, you know, for salmon. So I can start showing you around now.
excellent. So everyone, this is Patricia. I'm traveling for history. I'd like to thank Alan for this amazing information. I didn't know about you, but I didn't know much about fish, and now I know more. So that's always good. But this is Patricia. I'm traveling for history, and until I see you again, have a fabulous rest of your day. Bye now.